So in preparation for today, I always like to run through with my wife some of the things I'm going to talk about. And she gave me two pieces of advice. One, try not to tell too many jokes. Two, leave them with something memorable. And three, try not to tell too many jokes. So I'm going to really try to take my wife's advice this morning. Again, Caroline, thank you so much again for allowing me to share some time with you today. As she said, my name is Dan Hoppe, and I get the honor and privilege of serving as the Executive Director for Multiplying Good here in South Carolina. I'm going to share a little bit about Multiplying Good here in just a little bit. But as she also said, my wife and I recently started a consulting agency where we are working with companies to help with strategic planning, training, leadership training, all those types of things. So we're kind of bringing in both of my worlds today. We're going to talk a little bit about Multiplying Good, and we're also going to talk about some things that I've trained and taught on regarding motivation and recognition. So that's a little bit about what we're going to focus on today. Where this all stems from for me is a passion of mine. You know, I've been around leadership for a lot of years, over 20 years. And there's a lot of lessons that can be pulled away from leadership. But the reality is, I think the two most important ones I've ever encompassed, incorporated, and utilized is this concept of motivation and recognition. The reality is, we can lead all day long, but what we lead is people, right? People is how we move things forward. And if we aren't effectively motivating and recognizing those individuals, what are we leading, right? So if we consider ourselves leaders in our community, we consider ourselves individuals who believe so much in positive, good leadership, then we have to understand the importance of motivation and recognition. And so that's what I really want to be able to spend some time sharing with you today, all right? So, and I've got to get the cheaters on, because if not, I'm going to not be able to read my notes. All right, so I'm going to read something to you, all right? And I want you to synthesize it for a second. Recognition helps employees see that their company values them and their contributions to the success of their team and their company overall. All right, so again, recognition is all about contribution and value. I want to do an activity. I need a volunteer, somebody who's willing to come up here and help me with something. I want you to pretend I'm your boss, and I want you to say something you're working on that you're really excited about.
I'm finishing out the fiscal year, and I'm ready to hit President's Club.
Great. Now, what about that other project I asked you to take care of? Did you get it done yet? Stop right there. Did you see the reaction? How did that make you feel?
Belittled.
Right. Did you feel valued?
No.
Did you feel connected to this organization any more than what you did before? Probably less. Fair?
Yep.
Do that again. Same thing. Say the same exact thing again.
Finishing out the fiscal year, ready to hit President's Club.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm so glad you did. Thank you so much for taking that on. I mean, quite frankly, Kate, if you wouldn't have done that, we wouldn't be where we're at today. I really do appreciate you doing that. Do you see the difference there, right? She smiled, right? She felt valued. I hope she did anyway, right? How about a round of applause for Kate? Thank you. So a good example, hopefully, of something that didn't work, as well as hopefully something that showed that it did work. You know, we all get busy, right, with our jobs, especially if we're in positions of management. You know, we get busy all the time. We tend to kind of get focused on one thing. And the thing that I want to challenge you today to think about is think about that bigger picture, right? Think about the impact that you can make on an individual just by the simple activity that we just did with Kate today. First of all, using their name when we address them. Finding some kind of way to validate what they're doing. These are all things that we need to be working on a regular basis, all right? So, Kate, thank you again for that. All right, so I want to talk just a second about multiplying good. How many of you ever heard of multiplying good? It's okay if you haven't. You got Andrew, Tony, right? All right, Jefferson Awards. Anybody ever hear the Jefferson Awards before? A couple more of you? That's all right. Quite frankly, I hear this all the time. So, Multiplying Good is a national nonprofit organization that's been around for 50 years. It was established in 1972 by Jackie Kennedy Onassis, Robert Taft, and Sam Beard. Okay? And you got to think, 1972, the world was a very different place, and it needed some positivity. And so they decided they needed an opportunity to recognize and motivate our country and recognize individuals that are making differences in their community through service. Hence, the Jefferson Awards were born, okay? And so we do two things at Multiplying Good. We celebrate and we activate. And we celebrate through the Jefferson Awards. You can think of the Jefferson Awards almost like the Nobel Peace Prize for service. We're talking individuals like Paul Newman, Muhammad Ali, Shaquille O'Neal, Oprah Winfrey, individuals that are making impacts in our world and being recognized for the service that they do. But the reality is we realize that there's a lot of unsung heroes out there across the entire nation that aren't your Oprah Winfreys or your Paul Newmans or your Shaquille O'Neals. People right here in the Grand Strand that are making differences. And so we partner with media partners across the nation to help us identify those unsung heroes. Right here locally, we partner with WPDE, and Jennifer Abney does a great job sharing those stories on a monthly basis, identifying those unsung heroes making differences. Again, the importance of recognition. Now, do you think these people go out and do service because they're, look what I did? No, right? Like, that's not why they're doing it. But at the same time, why do we recognize them? Why do you think we recognize them? Thoughts?
We want to inspire others.
Exactly.
To do more good.
Inspire others, share the wealth, right? You know, I think we have an obligation to constantly remind people what the good is. Again, whether we're talking Jefferson Awards, service to our communities, or doing some kind of a project in our offices that makes a difference in moving our mission forward. I'm going to say that again. We have an obligation to recognize those individuals making those differences. The other thing we do with Jefferson Awards, with Multiplying Good, is a program called Students in Action. You actually have flyers on in your table about our Students in Action program. Think of Grand Strand Young Professionals, but for high school kids in some regards. All right? So we're taking high school students, we're giving them leadership training, we're giving them skills around, soft skills that they're going to need to be successful in life. But we're also sharing with them the importance of making contributions and impact to their communities. We're giving them a chance to go out, identify through a needs assessment process where there are absolute needs in their community, and then actually making a difference. We've seen students take on projects like homelessness, hunger, mental health awareness, suicide prevention. More recently, we've had a lot of students, teams take on projects related to the aftermath of COVID and what that's done to students from a socialization standpoint. The reality is a lot of kids through COVID got real comfortable behind their computers. It's like they forgot how to socialize in communities. And so now we've got a generation of kids that were in, say, elementary school who are about to go into intermediate or middle school. Or we got middle school kids about to go into high school. So new schools, new kids, and they're scared. They don't know how best to kind of reintegrate themselves into a new community. And so we've got students that have said, I've witnessed this, I've seen this, I want to make a difference. And so they've taken that on as a project for themselves to go out there and make those differences. Now, just like what we said earlier, our students don't do these projects for recognition. And yet, they still have that opportunity to be recognized both at the state and national level for these contributions that they're making. We give these National Jefferson Awards away every year in New York City. And we actually recognize one student team from across the nation to be considered and receive this National Jefferson Award. And I can tell you, 6 out of the last 7 years, that National Students in Action Jefferson Award came from right here in South Carolina. So we've got a long history with Students in Action, with understanding the importance of giving back to others, and the importance of understanding what recognition can mean right here through Multiplying Good in South Carolina. So a little bit about who we are from a Multiplying Good standpoint. So we're going to get into a couple of thoughts around motivation and recognition. And it's first going to start with a couple of books that I want to recommend if you have not read. This first one is probably my absolute favorite book, and it's called The Leadership Challenge. Anybody ever read this? I know Sam has. I know Jason got a copy of it because he was in Leadership Grand Strand with me. Whether he read it, I don't know, but I know he got a copy of it. This is such a fantastic book. I know it looks big, but it's actually a quick read. I've probably been through this book about 8 times myself. I use it as part of my doctorate program. But it really breaks down leadership into 5 exemplary practices, okay? The first one is model the way. And that one seems pretty explanatory, right? Model the way. What do you think that means? If we're talking about leadership and we're talking about a practice known as model the way, what do you think that means? Thoughts?
You want to show exactly what you're preaching.
Right, exactly. What else? Anybody? If you're asking somebody to go out and do something, you should probably be willing to do that yourself, right? Yeah. And if you want to change the culture of your company, if you want to make adaptations, changes, whatever that looks like, where does that change have to start? With you. That's right. So model the way is the first practice of exemplary leadership in this book. The second one is enable others to act. I'm going to say that again. Enable others to act. What do you think that means when you hear that?
Let go of the control.
I heard empowering. What was that?
Let go of the control.
Let go of the control. Not always easy. Sometimes we're in a position of leadership because the buck tends to stop with us, right? But yes, empowering others. So again, that same situation when Kate came up and we did that little scenario. Do you think she felt empowered by my first reaction to her? Probably not. In fact, she probably wanted to run back to her office and didn't want to see me the rest of the day. But in that second scenario, not only I hope she felt empowered, but she probably felt like she could even take on more. Maybe she was motivated or excited to take on another project because there was validation for what she did, right? So we're talking about recognition and motivation. That concept of enabling others to act is so important because you're putting them in a position where they feel not only connected to your organization, but they feel they can make a difference. How many times have you all been in a position at any point in your life, could be when you were in high school, all through college, and your professional careers, where you gave everything you had for a project or some kind of a experience at work, and you walked away just not feeling like you were appreciated for that, right? I think almost every single one of us at some level can say that we've experienced that. And how did that make you feel? It probably made you feel you didn't have that connection with the organization. Maybe that was one of the reasons you started looking for your next opportunity. So some of what we're talking about today from a motivation and recognition standpoint has implications outside of the now, has implications for what the future of your organization looks like. And I'm talking specifically about retention. You know, it's so much easier to retain employees than to hire new ones. I think we've probably all heard that over and over again. It goes for clients, it goes for employees, it goes for whatever scenario we want to talk about. Retention is so much easier. It takes effort. It takes some strategic thinking on your part, but retention is so much easier than bringing in new, right? So enable others to act. Inspire a shared vision. When I say that, what does that mean? What do you think of when I say inspire a shared vision? Right. So you break those three words down, inspire. Right there alone, that feels positive to me, right? When you hear that word inspiration, inspire, it's like you want to be part of something, okay? Shared, collaborative. One of the things that I think a lot of people get hung up on all this is either really into collaboration or a lack of collaboration. And I can promise you collaboration starts with good communication. So collaborative cultures within an organization go a long, long way when it comes to motivation and recognition. So if you take anything away from me today, realize the importance of good communication and collaboration and how that all relates to motivation and recognition with those that you lead. Okay? So inspire a shared vision. If you give individuals that empowerment that we talked about earlier to be a part of the future of your organization from a visualization standpoint, how likely are they to not only buy into that vision, but stick with you to see it out? Probably a lot more, right? So again, if you include them in that process of understanding the vision of where you want to go, current state, desired state, and where they fit into that process to get from point A to point B, that in itself is a way to motivate them. It has nothing to do with, saying nice things to them or giving them things, or we're going to get into some tools here in a minute. But just inclusion in that process will motivate those that you're around. So remember that. Inclusion in that process is really important. This one's always interesting. The fourth practice of exemplary leadership, challenge the process. What do you think that one means? Thoughts around challenge the process. Okay, so change. Change is inevitable at any given point in our careers, right? Like whether it's a new project we're taking on, maybe a new direction we're looking at for our organization, change is inevitable. And we've all heard this concept of if it isn't broke, don't fix it, right? Well, what if it is broke, but we're not recognizing it? And so we have to kind of ask ourselves the hard question sometimes of where are things at? Why are they at this point, and is that the best way to do things? So, challenge the process is about getting a little uncomfortable and understanding what the realm of possibility looks like. And again, when it comes to motivation and recognition, if we're actually in a position to empower those that we lead to start challenging the process, challenging the way we do things, and bringing those ideas to the table, what does the growth potential look like? But it starts with a conversation. It starts with a change of culture. It starts with making it okay to challenge that process just a little bit. All right. The last practice of exemplary leadership in that book is known as encouraging the heart. And I think by far that's my favorite of them all, because it is a direct line to what we're talking about today with motivation and recognition. When we encourage the heart, when we motivate and include and empower others, not only do they feel connected to our organization, but they feel connected to us. And at the end of the day, when we're in a position of leadership, it's about relationships. It's about maintaining, growing, building those relationships that are going to help us as professionals, help our business, help our community. Okay? So again, I think encourage the heart is by far my absolute favorite of our 5 practices of exemplary leadership. There's so much more in this book, some fantastic examples. Again, highly, highly recommend you take the time to go through this. It is such a wonderful, quick read. The other book that I want to quickly share with you is a book called The Disney Way. Bill Capodelli and Lynn Jackson, another favorite of mine, because it's really simple. It breaks this concept of how to move things forward, how to grow people, how to inspire, how to change your thinking into 4 concepts. Dream, believe, dare, and do. And when you think of the Disney Corporation, right, and wherever they're at today, wherever they were historically, that is literally how they have moved every project, every idea forward is around those 4 concepts of dream, believe, dare, and do. And no matter what walk of life you're in, you can take those 4 concepts and literally implement them in your daily life. I used to serve as an academic advisor in higher education. In fact, I spent almost 20 years in higher ed. And I used to teach a class to college kids first time in, and basically how to be good students. And I did a whole presentation about dream, believe, dare, and do, because think about that. If you're a freshman in college and you may know what you want to do, but maybe you don't know what to do with your life, the concept of dream, believe, dare, and do will help you really find some focus. It's going to help you understand the realm of possibility. It's going to show you what hard work and determination can look like. One of the things that I think is interesting about this concept of dream, believe, dare, and do is the concept of dare. Failure. That's a scary word. But the reality is, we've all done it. I think, and I'm going to literally ask for a show of hands, how many of you have ever experienced failure in your life, right? We all can say that. And what came out of that failure? Growth, I hope, right? Like we grew. We felt something. It didn't work, but we learned something from it and we moved on. And maybe we failed again and we moved on again. And eventually we found that sweet spot of those experiences that has landed us maybe to where we're at today. Walt Disney went bankrupt 4 times before he ever made any kind of success. So, people hear that word failure and they immediately see it as a negative thing. I see failure as an opportunity all day long, 7 days a week. I actually coach lacrosse for my son. And I coach lacrosse at St. James High School, JV girls. And to be fair, we didn't have a strong season this year, okay? And every time we got done with the game, I would look at my players and I'd say, all right, so we didn't win. And in some regards we did, because we learned, right? Every time they walked off the field, I saw growth in how they played. I saw growth as a team and a culture, as a collaboration. And so that only makes us better for future seasons, future opportunities. I think when we look at failure in general from our business perspective, we need to look at it through that same lens. Especially if you're in a position of leadership and you have those around you that may not be exactly hitting the mark or may not exactly give you exactly what you're looking for. Give them a chance. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Show them how to grow from there. All right. The last thing on the Disney way, and then I'm going to get into these tools that I want to share with you. is this concept of believe. And I think there's a direct correlation between motivation and recognition with this concept of believing, especially when you're in a position to believe in others. And I think it's important, too, that this belief standpoint, sometimes you have to believe in those that maybe not even believe in you. And that's not an easy thing to do. I'll give you a great example of that. I was not exactly a stellar student in high school. And when it came time to go to college, I just don't know that it was in my cards. And yet, I went for it. And I did okay. Didn't do great, but I did okay. I graduated. And then I decided I wanted to go get a master's. And again, I wasn't sure on that, but my wife said, you got this, you can do this. My family said, you can do this. And ultimately, I did that too. And then it came time to say, I think I want to go get a doctorate. And everybody I think they thought I was nuts. But that belief system between your family, your friends, your coworkers, those that believe in you, is really strong, right? So give that back to those that you lead. Give that back to those that you work with. Part of that collaborative culture is that constant belief in who you are and those that you surround yourself with, especially if you're all aligned to the same mission. So believe is really good. Ted Lasso said it best, believe and believe, right? Any Ted Lasso fans out there? I love Ted Lasso. I'm really sad this is the last season, but love Ted Lasso. All right, so that was dream, believe, dare, and do. So let's get into some nuts and bolts of this whole concept of motivation and recognition. There's really two types of motivation and recognition: structured and unstructured, okay? And so when we talk about structured opportunities to motivate and recognize, we're talking about those obvious opportunities, things like work anniversaries, things like employee annual evaluation, something that's on a schedule, right? And these are opportunities for us to recognize and motivate individuals because it's already set forward for us, right? It's kind of easier for us to find those timelines to do that. And then there's those unstructured opportunities that kind of just crop up spontaneously. Maybe it's the project that Kate was working on that we recognized. Maybe it was something that didn't exactly go the way we thought, but something came out of it we weren't expecting, and that's something we can grow from. And so we find an opportunity to recognize that. I think the takeaway on this is the reality is you need both, right? We can't just hang our hats on those structured opportunities to recognize and motivate individuals because they're only going to come up so often. Every year, once a year, there's a work anniversary. Once a year, there's an opportunity to do some kind of a yearly evaluation. So we need both, right? There has to be a combination of structured and unstructured opportunities to motivate and recognize those that we work with. So how do we actually go about doing that? That's the real question. I think first and foremost is you got to get personal with those that you lead, that you work with, and share some level of personality with them. I think the best advice I can give any of you is just because you may like to be recognized and motivated one way doesn't mean those around you share that same sentiment, right? So it's okay to ask. There's times that in the past when I've been in a position of leadership and I'll have one-on-ones with employees, and I'll just point blank say to them, listen, how do you like to be recognized? I've had employees say, oh gosh, I don't want to be recognized for anything. No, I don't want to be recognized. So they're a little bit more subtle. They're not exactly the ones that I'm going to send a mass company email out congratulating them. They probably wouldn't appreciate that, right? And then I have other employees that'll be, oh my gosh, I love it. Let's have a party. Let's celebrate everything I've done. Okay, I know that now too, right? So I think it's key to understand your employees and really get to what motivates them. How do they want to be recognized? Just ask them the question. Because then you've taken the secret out, right? It makes it easy for you as a leader how to actually do that. Get personal with them. So I'm going to give you 8 tools. And I want you to kind of remember one or two of these because we're going to do an activity at the end of this presentation today where you're going to use at least one or two of them, all right? But we have 8 tools of how we can help employees feel more appreciated, connected, and a part of our organization. So this first one, scary word if you're in a management position, bonuses. I saw the laugh, I saw the cringe, I saw it all right now, right? So right away everybody thinks, bonuses are great, how do I afford to do that, okay? And I think monetary bonuses doesn't always mean money, okay? A bonus can be a $5 gift card to Starbucks or Dunkin' that you just randomly stop in an office and say, man, Kate, thank you again. That was a great project. Here, go get yourself a coffee. Okay? So I think when people say the word bonuses, they think, oh my gosh, I got to write a check. I have to come up with this big dollar amount. No. A bonus is just that. It's something they weren't expecting. It was a tangible opportunity that they weren't expecting. So it doesn't always have to be necessarily monetary. Okay? But find a way to sprinkle that bonus to them. I can promise you they're going to walk in with a big smile on their face the next time you see them because you took the time to do that gesture. I want you to think about that for a second. You know, if you had 25, 30 employees that you work with, and randomly throughout the year, you gave every single one of them a $5 gift card to Dunkin'. Yeah, that's a little bit of money out of your pocket, but what is that impact on those individuals for that $5 gift card you gave? I can tell you it's almost priceless because the connection they're going to feel to you, the connection they're going to feel to the organization, they're going to remember that. So bonus, that's the first one that I want to share with you. Second one is written praise, okay? So again, this might be somebody who doesn't like the party, but they still need to know that you truly recognize the efforts and the differences that they're making. And it can be as simple as an email, a thank you card. I'm really bad at thank you cards. My handwriting's terrible. You can actually ask Sam. You don't want me to write anything down. In fact, I've got notes on here. I'm questioning what I wrote already. So you don't want a thank you note from me, but I'll send emails all day long, okay? And I can't even begin to tell you how important those written communications are for a couple of reasons. One, it's that immediate, here it is. Like, thank you. I'm being recognized for the effort I've made. I can see it in black and white right in front of me. How many of you ever received a card from somebody that you put in a desk and a year later you're cleaning out your desk and you find that card? And what do? You reread it again. And then you tuck it away, and maybe you find it again. There's actually a reoccurrence of that impact when you give a written recognition, okay? Here's the only thing about written recognitions that I'm going to caution you on. Obviously, choose your words. And second, make sure there's real genuineness behind it. And let me tell you where I'm coming from on that. I used to work for a hospital system I worked for a college that was owned by a hospital system back in Ohio. And they put us through all this leadership training and told us all these things we should be doing. And one of the things they told us was on a monthly basis, we were required, let me say that again, we were required to send 7 thank you notes to our employees, those that we interact with, each month. Required. So we did. I mean, literally, I had to make copies of the written communications that we thank yous, recognitions we put out. And those copies went into my performance evaluation packet for my supervisor to make sure that I did 7 thank yous or recognitions per month throughout the year. If word got out, and it did, that that was a requirement, how do you feel, Jay, when you get a recognition letter from Dan Hoppe and you worked at that college? Does it mean anything to you? No,
it feels forced.
Right. There's no genuineness behind it. So no matter what kind of recognition that we're going to talk about today, whatever example we use, really make sure there's a level of genuine behind it. You know, there's some times where people might say, oh, yeah, you know what, this person clearly needs, let me just give them what they need. Maybe a better way to look at that is, man, this person really needs that, and I want to give it to them. Let's recognize the effort that they've made. Effort, impact. Those are all really important things for us to consider when we're in these roles of leadership and opportunity. So written praise. Verbal praise is the next one, right? So when we talk about verbal praise, this is an opportunity for us to, like I did with Kate in that early example, genuinely tell them where I stand. Now, verbal praise is great because it's that immediate opportunity, but the longevity of that isn't necessarily go anywhere, right? So again, the example I gave, Kate came up, I gave her fantastic praise for the wonderful project that she's done, and she walked away, she sat down, and within 10 minutes she was already on to something else. So verbal praise is great for that immediate situation, but the longevity of that isn't necessarily there. So what would be a situation where verbal praise would be really important in the right opportunity to use? Thoughts?
I feel like when it's something small, when you notice something and it could be something you would forget yourself.
Yeah.
Something as simple as like, I really appreciate you for taking that to the trash for me.
Yep.
Like something small like that.
Like on the spot, spontaneous, it's right there in front of me. Yep. Anyone else? Thoughts?
When it's like amongst a group of people, like you have the opportunity to recognize people in front of their peers.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to give another example of that in a second, but you're exactly right. I think those intimate small groups where there's an effort that's been made and you can recognize them in front of their peers verbally, it shows not only that individual you appreciated them, but it also shows the rest of the group that you're okay with giving praise when hard work is given, right? Yeah, it's a good one. Other examples? What about a situation where maybe you realize on the spot somebody isn't in a great place in that particular moment? You know, a lot of times when we're in positions of management and leadership, I like to walk around, well, not so much anymore because we work remote, but when I used to work in a business or I worked in a building, you know, I would walk around a bit. I think it's important for us to engage with those that we work with, right? And I don't care if you're in a position of management or if you are a peer to somebody, if we see somebody that's not exactly in a great place, that opportunity to give some verbal motivation, some verbal recognition, what does that do for that individual? Maybe we've just shifted the way they think for that hot second. Maybe we've helped them start thinking a different way to have a better day. You have no idea how powerful your words can be to somebody at that right moment when they need it. So I just ask you as peers, managers, professionals, have your feelers and your sensors out there almost at any given time. You really never know where somebody's at on something. And if your gut tells you to engage with that person at some level, listen to it. Listen to what your gut's telling you. Engage with that individual. Find an opportunity to give them some praise and recognition on the spot, because you never know what that's going to do for them to kind of make their day a better day, to think a little bit differently, to take on something maybe they weren't prepared to do. So verbal recognition is a really, really important one. Formal recognition. Oh, and actually, I want to give another example of that verbal opportunity. At Multiplying Good, we have bi-weekly all-staff meeting. We have about 40-ish employees that work with our organization. And we get together every other week via Teams and have a meeting. And we have an individual within our organization who took it upon herself to organize something we call value shout-outs. And this is an opportunity where if you've interacted with somebody or witnessed somebody doing something fantastic, there's a little online form you can fill out. It goes directly to Tabitha. And at the end of every single one of our meetings, she does these shout-outs in front of everybody where we say, hey, you know, Sam did a great job with our Changemaker event. We're so excited for all the work she did and the contribution to the organization. Way to go, Sam. Okay. These are amazing. Like, you sit around, there's 40 people sitting on a Teams meeting, and once in a while your name gets called out for being recognized for something that you did. I guess what I'm saying is that if you have opportunities to do those same things within your organization, take those opportunities. A, to praise others, and B, if that isn't in place, maybe make that recommendation for it. Is there a chance for us to open the doors for recognition and opportunity?
It's almost like an anonymous, like, comment card.
That's right.
But like internally for employees.
Yeah. So again, I think those verbal praise opportunities, that's a great example of how that can actually be done better. Formal recognition. So this would be an opportunity to really find a public and yet very structured way to recognize people. Maybe something like the Jefferson Awards. But obviously maybe you're not going to necessarily be in a position to do Jefferson Awards per se within your organization. So I'll give you an example of how I've done that in the past. When I worked for that same college back in Ohio, I oversaw online learning. And I oversaw online learning when it wasn't popular, 20 years ago, when people didn't believe in it. They didn't think it was valid. They didn't think you could replicate a classroom experience in an online environment. And so it was an uphill battle for years to really find a sweet spot where we could find some balance in that. And I had several faculty members that were just dead set against it. I had this one. He was a biology professor out of Boston that worked for us. And he had taught in the classroom for years. And I can remember we had a conversation with him about asking to teach his science class online, his biology class online. And he came into my office in his very strong Boston accent. He's like, listen, you're never going to get me to do this. There's no way I will ever be comfortable doing this. Stop asking. That's not how I'm going to teach. And I said to myself, he's my next project. There's going to be a way we can get him a little excited about this. And ironically enough, the students were the ones that really helped in that process. They started seeing other teachers that were doing small things in the online environment, and they started asking him, well, can we do this? Can we put this one, can we submit this assignment online, so on and so forth. And so one day he came to me and he said, hey, I'm not moving my class online, but I've had students ask me about submitting their assignments online. How would I do that? Oh, Dave, that's real easy. Show him how to do it. Next thing you know, a couple of assignments he submits online. Next semester comes along, hey, my students are talking about, they're doing this discussion in their other classes. How do I do a discussion? I'm not moving online, Dan, but how do I do a discussion? Because I think that'd be neat for them to talk outside of class. Oh yeah, Dave, no problem, we set that up. Over a 1-year span, we went from doing nothing online to him piloting an online version of his biology class. 2 years later, I instituted something known as the Webby Awards at this college. It was a chance to recognize faculty members who have done amazing things in an online environment. And it was formal. I mean, we had a room twice the size of this. I had probably 20 faculty in the room. I put a tuxedo on. We had a nice backdrop that looked like a velvety kind of carpet or a curtain kind of thing. It was kind of like watching a award ceremony, right? And who do you think won the Webby of the Year award? David Sigmon. And it was one of those deals where we really saw growth and change from him, from this point to this point. And there were little celebrations along the way, but when he got to that enchilada opportunity of really changing his thoughts for the betterment of our students, there had to be a formal recognition for that. When I left that college, he came to me the day, my last day, and said, hey, I want to let you know I just accepted a new position. I'm moving back to Boston. And he oversaw an entire online science department. So this is a gentleman who wanted nothing to do with online learning, who now completely oversaw a science online department. So you talk about motivating individuals and recognizing along the way where the realm of possibility really looks. I think formal recognition is a great way to do that. I think we kind of talked about this already, this concept of informal recognition, those spontaneous, quick opportunities to recognize somebody in the efforts that they've made. It's got to be on the spot. So when I say as a manager, when you have to have those feelers out, it's so important to constantly be engaging and communicating with those you're around, because it really does give you an opportunity to have those informal and spontaneous opportunities for engagement with them. Peer-to-peer recognition. So it's one thing to be recognized by those that are in a leadership position because they may feel like they have to do that. But what does it feel like when one of your peers recognizes the work that you do? It feels a little different, doesn't it, right? You know, if all of a sudden somebody you've worked side by side for a year on a project, whatever it might look like, and they say, man, that was really great. Fantastic job. That's wonderful. It feels a little different when we do it from peer to peer. So I challenge you to do more of that. Find those better opportunities for you to engage with those you work side by side with on a regular basis. Because I promise you they're going to feel really good when you do that. And you're now creating and instilling a culture in them that maybe they're going to share that wealth with others. Right? You heard the concept, pay it forward. It works with a lot of different things, and I think recognition and motivation is one of them. Pay it forward. Be one of those peer opportunities where you make somebody else's day. My wife does this whole project as part of our consulting agency around a book that's focused on filling the bucket. Anybody ever heard of this concept where basically, you know, the idea is that if you think of somebody's bucket and their capacity to hold things, the more we get busy, the more we don't aren't connected to the project, people, whatever it might look like, our bucket tends to dwindle. But the more we get excited around what we're doing, the more there's collaboration and engagement and recognition from others, it fills our bucket up, it makes us feel better, okay? So I challenge you to fill people's buckets. Go out there and find opportunities to engage and motivate and inspire others, because not only is it going to make them feel better, it's going to make you feel better in the same process. It's kind of a win-win situation. So find ways to fill people's buckets. Leader to team recognition. Okay? So we've talked about peer recognition. We've talked about general opportunities to recognize, but I think kind of to what Eric was saying, if there's an opportunity to recognize more globally a team of individuals, the impact is a little bit more than that one-on-one opportunity. One, you're recognizing a group of individuals for an effort that they're doing, and two, if you do it in a very public venue, you're inspiring others to want to do better, to work harder, to be a part of something bigger, right? Let me give you a really great example of that. We talked a little bit about the Disney way. There's an example in the book where they talk about this concept of belief. And specifically, they use an example with the Disney laundry department. So how many of you ever been down to Walt Disney World in Florida? Okay? So huge property, right? We've got 4 theme parks, 2 water parks. I can't even tell you how many resorts, restaurants, you name it. At the end of the day, that's a lot of laundry, right? Bed sheets, towels, linens, napkins, tablecloths, whatever. Lots of laundry. And so they have one centralized laundry facility, and they would have to move all of those dirty laundry from wherever they were at on the Disney property to this centralized laundry facility, and then find a way to get it all back. And at the end of the day, it wasn't working. It wasn't efficient. Things weren't getting where they need to on time. And so they said, listen, we got to have a better process. And so all these heads of the departments came together and sat around and started brainstorming ways they could do this better. And somebody finally got the right idea. And they said, you know what? We're not the right ones sitting at this table trying to solve this problem. We need the individuals, we need representation from the housekeepers that are collecting the dirty soil. We need representatives from the drivers who are moving the dirty soils to the facilities. We need individuals in our cleaning department, laundry department, who are actually the ones cleaning and folding and preparing the linens. And then we also need to make sure those that are in charge of stock and inventory have a play in all of this. So they removed themselves at this top level management, if you will, and they literally brought in frontline workers. Sat them in a room and said, here's our problem. How do we fix it? And then they walked away. And they literally let those frontline workers sit in that room and hash out a problem, or hash out a solution. And after a period of time, they came back and said, this is what we think it should look like. And they implemented it. And to this day, that is the exact same process that Disney uses to incorporate efficiency with moving those linens around. But it took that recognition from their top management to say, hey, we're not the right ones to do this. Let's bring the folks in that actually know how to solve this problem, and let's empower them to make those differences. Now, I'm sure those individuals didn't get huge bonuses. There might have been minimal recognition. But if you sat on that team, and then you sat back and saw that they implemented what you suggested, and it worked, how does that make you feel? Right? You feel a part of it. Like you sit there and say, I did that, right? So find those opportunities to empower those around you to be a part of it, and then listen to them. Listen, every idea they come up with may not work. It may not be the right solution. But what's the harm in giving it a try? Failure? Hey, we already talked about that. We'll grow from that. We can fix that. We can make it better next time. But if there's a way to formally recognize and empower those individuals to be a part of it and then actually let them implement something, what does that do for their longevity and investment in what you do, right? It's a huge opportunity there. And then the last one is this concept of day-to-day recognition. And man, that's not easy sometimes, especially, when we got a lot going on in our lives. Again, whether we're in a position of management or not, we're busy, right? We have a lot of expectation. We have a lot of things we're trying to accomplish. But if we're in a position to kind of force ourselves to take a step back and take in some perspective, what we're actually fortunate for, what we recognize, what we're grateful for, and just take a second to find a way to recognize the situation we're in and maybe thank those that have helped us get there. What does that impact look like, both for you from a reflection standpoint and for those that you get a chance to interact with? But it all starts with a cultural change within your organizations. There has to be a commitment to motivation and recognition because it has to be intentional. It can't necessarily be something we just do once in a while, something that we say, let's give it a try. When we're intentional and we put some strategic planning behind it, and we actually put a process in place where we're implementing a plan to really motivate and recognize others, that's where we can see it be effective. But when we just once in a while say, hey, great job with that, or wow, you did good there, number one, it doesn't feel genuine necessarily, and two, it doesn't necessarily contribute to this concept of collaboration and growth. So again, I challenge you to be intentional, and I challenge you to really think about how you're engaging with those around you and finding opportunities to recognize the efforts that are being made. Because through that process alone, there's going to be a natural opportunity to motivate them to want to be a closer part of that mission. So, the scenarios in general, somewhat familiar? Could you relate to some of these scenarios for the most part? Yes. All right. So let's walk through each one of them, and I'd like to hear how a few of you would plan to handle that. So with this first one, I keep losing my glasses. All right, so this first one, Hannah, a fairly new employee with your organization, took it upon herself to create a document which outlines some new services you now offer. The document is not public-facing ready, but it is a good start to something that needed to be done. How do you recognize and motivate the effort to go to the next level? Thoughts? How would you do that? Yeah.
You said some informal.
Okay.
Just to give her like recognition and praise for taking the initiative, but then be able to offer her guidance along the way.
So Jay, talk to me how that might look. Some thoughts.
I mean, complimenting her for again taking the initiative and starting the project, and then maybe offering how the leader or the team can support her in that and what that looks like from the leader and the team. Yeah,
I think that's huge. Not only recognizing the effort, but maybe even just a little bit of direction in order to clearly help her get it to that next level, right? Good. Other thoughts? Other ways you would do that? Anyone else want to share?
Maybe like give her the opportunity to like share it in stacking or whatever.
Yeah. So this is something she's taken on herself. Give her a chance to present that. Two things come out of that, right? One, she gets a chance to highlight her efforts in front of everybody, but two, instead of just you as maybe a manager sharing maybe what it could look like to take it to the next level, there might be opportunity for some of that peer engagement to take place, correct? So again, here's an opportunity for Hannah to present and some of her peers say, hey, Hannah, great job. Maybe we can consider adding this, and then maybe those individuals get a little excited to be a part of that process with Hannah as well. Yeah, that's good, Eric. Other thoughts? All right, let's look at the next one. Danny, a seasoned employee who isn't traditionally too motivated to take on anything new, is the most experienced in your customer service protocols. It has been identified you need to completely revamp your customer service approach, and Danny would be perfect. How do you motivate him to take on the role and perhaps even be a little excited about it? Thoughts? How do we get Danny on board?
I think the first step is like getting personal to understand what motivates him, what drives him, and then using his skill sets, like what he's good at, to say, hey, you're really good at this. I really want to empower you to take on this project and execute it. So just personal and leveraging his skill sets.
Yeah, capitalizing on those strengths, right, and really communicating those to him. It might be one of those things where Danny doesn't even know that's how he's perceived, right? So if we bring some awareness, some of those real conversations with individuals, what does that open up as far as possibility? That's fantastic. Other thoughts, how you might motivate or recognize Danny?
Bonuses.
Yeah, right?
If they're not motivated, they're probably not really going to be too eager for recognition or anything give
Yep.
a little bit more incentive.
Exactly right, Andrew.
We
I'm sorry?
We said, kind of similar to what Andrew said, this person seems like that they're probably a little bit more quiet, maybe doesn't like to have a loud way of being recognized.
Yep.
So we were saying a little bit of day-to-day to kind of warm them up, give them a written recognition along with what you were hoping he would complete, and then look at giving him a bonus at the end once that project is complete, so he has a goal and feels really needed, rather than throwing the bonus
Yeah.
right up front because he's upset.
What I love about what you said was that was truly a multifaceted approach to how we're going to recognize and motivate him, right? So we've taken 3 or 4 different approaches because we've realized, and really this is going to kind of lead to what I'm summing up today's presentation is going to be about. No one approach is going to work in every situation, right? There has to be a collaborative approach with how we identify the right approach to this. So that's exactly right. You know, in this scenario too, I think if you look at it from, it's almost like if you give him this as this is his own opportunity, a place where he can make his mark and you communicate that to him effectively, that could be a motivator in this situation with him as well. Good. Other thoughts on how to motivate and encourage Danny? All right, let's move on to Sam. Sam is a grumpy employee who is dedicated but probably completely burned out. Because he comes across too negative, he isn't well received with the rest of your staff. At the same time, Sam has done amazing work, and you see some opportunity for him to move into a role that he would be perfect for and may stop him feeling burned out. This would require staff getting on board. So how are we going to recognize and motivate Sam?
We said have one-on-ones, so
Okay.
have a meeting with Sam, figure out how he can get to a place where he's more balanced, less burned out, and then have one-on-ones with the rest of the team to be like, Dan, we want Danny or Sam to transition into a new role, but this will require a shift in workloads for you guys. Are you guys on board? And then so that no one's being singled out,
Yep.
but that you get to have that one-on-one personal conversation with everyone before Sam moves on.
Yep, absolutely. Good one. Other thoughts? Sam? Yeah.
We put team appreciation, so whether
Ah.
that's just a card everyone signs and like a little genuine letter to that person, or verbally, or maybe like a little bonus, like a little gift card each from everyone on the team. Starbucks.
Yeah, that's good. So again, we're looking at a couple different approaches here. Anything else, any other different ways you might approach Sam? Yeah.
We were talking about maybe doing leader to team to
Mm.
kind of group recognize and boost everybody up. Like you were saying, lead by example. So if
Yeah.
you as a leader are still cheering on somebody who seems grumpy and not fit, it gets everybody else going. So then that peer-to-peer motivation begins to happen.
Yep. Good. Other thoughts? So here's one thing that we talked about at one point today, and this is where I think it's a good example of where it could be used. Having a very personal and real conversation with Sam. Sam, hey, I don't know if you're aware, this is how you're perceived. I don't necessarily see it that way, but I'm telling you, this is how people see you. And I know you well enough that that's not how you want to necessarily be perceived. I also know, man, here's a real opportunity for you that I really want you to take and run with. But my concern is this is how the perception of you is. How do we work together to change that? So I think having a real conversation in that scenario and kind of laying it all out there and allowing Sam to be part of the conversation and saying, oh, wow, well, I didn't know. Or maybe he's going to come back and say, yeah, that's exactly how I figured out and perceived. And then maybe it's another conversation you're having with Sam. But I think you need to have those real conversations in those scenarios because there's a lot of negative impact that could happen if that conversation isn't handled just right. And I'm not talking just with Sam. I'm talking with your team. I'm talking with your organization, right? So I think a real conversation is really important. All right, our last one. Max is an energetic college intern with so much energy for what he does. He oversees the poolside recreational activities at your resort and has done an amazing job so far this summer. Max always seems to remind you of all the work he's doing and makes an effort to reach out to you daily with updates, which most days you respond very quickly, usually on the move because you're so busy. So how do you engage, motivate, and recognize Max? Thoughts? Yeah.
It sounds like you've had an opportunity to kind of touch base day to day with kind of informal recognition. It might be time for something bigger.
Yeah.
You're doing such a wonderful job.
Right.
That point, you pull in peers, let them talk about what he's done, all that type of thing.
Yeah, perfect. Other thoughts?
Like something tangible that he can have, like an award or certificate.
There you go.
Like, if he thrives on like that constant feedback, then something he can have that reminds him of the great job he does.
Yeah. How many of you out there, let's be honest here, how many out there maybe has a little Max in you? Right? Like, I don't know about y'all, but especially when I was younger, I thrived off of feedback. It wasn't necessarily praise or recognition, it was feedback. It was that validation that I'm actually doing what I'm expected or want to do. I think in some regards we all like that. And I think whether we're in a situation where we're a manager or a peer, if we're not necessarily like that, we might be annoyed by that, right? And I guess what I'm challenging you is realizing everybody needs and takes things just a little differently. And if you pick up on the fact somebody needs that, what's the harm in giving it to them? Right? What does that do for them, and what does that do for your organization if you feed that just a bit? Right? Other thoughts on Matt? Yeah.
We also said along with that formal recognition, I don't know about y'all, but sometimes it gets really annoying when there's somebody who's extremely upfront and needing all the praise and maybe is the one taking the credit
Yep.
for what the group is doing. So making sure you implement some team recognition as well to keep everybody motivated, because it's not just that one individual, because the rest of the team can also burn out that light.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Good. Other thoughts on how we address Max?
Max could also use a project.
Yeah.
If you're in charge of something, give him a
I
project
love
that
it.
he can own and feel that he's accomplished, somewhere to put all his energy.
That's a great point. If Max has enough time to track you down every day to tell you exactly what he's doing, he's got time for a project, right? Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Love it, love it. All right, other thoughts? All right, so little secret. Each one of these scenarios is actually my kids, all right? So Hannah is my daughter who just turned 17, and this scenario is very my daughter. Danny is my 20-year-old son at Clemson, and this is my son, Danny. Sam is my 13-year-old son, and he is literally a grouchy old man at 13 years old. But he is amazing, right? And he has so much potential, and sometimes he just needs to be reminded how he comes across. And then, it's a little bit of a stretch, Max is my 9-month-old golden doodle. Energetic, did you pick up on that, right? Max is insane, and he loves praise and validation and pets and hugs and all that, treats, you name it. Sometimes it's exhausting with Max. But we have to find opportunities to do that with everybody, including our pets, right? So,
Max is always on time for team meetings, though.
yeah, I think Max was disappointed he couldn't come today, to be honest. All right, did this activity help kind of realize the different scenarios and maybe some ways to implement some things, right? Like kind of got you thinking a bit? Good, excellent. All right, so we're going to wrap things up here. I think the biggest takeaway from today was I gave you 8 tools that you can use. And they're just that, they're tools. And I encourage you to put them in your toolbox. Now, by the nature of a toolbox, you don't necessarily need a toolbox if you're only going to keep one tool in it, right? You're not going to carry around a toolbox with a screwdriver in it or a pair of pliers. You're going to have a toolbox that has lots of different tools in it. To that same point, if you're working on a project, say building a house, you're not going to build that entire house with a screwdriver or a saw or a pair of pliers. You're going to need all of your tools to effectively build that house. I'm going to encourage you to do that same thing with those you interact with. Carry that toolbox around. Keep adding to that toolbox. My wife gets really angry with me. I'm a Ryobi guy. I'm probably going to stop at the direct outlet on the way home today, see what they got. I've got a wall of Ryobi tools. But at any given time, when she gives me a honey-do list, I got to make sure I have the right tool that I can grab to effectively do that job, right? So I encourage you to keep building your toolbox. Keep adding to it. Hone those right tools and opportunities so that when you come into a situation, you're prepared. You have everything you need. And here's hopefully 8 new tools that you can put into that toolbox specific to how you can engage, motivate, and recognize those you work with, those you're responsible for, those you interact with. And little secret, what we talked about today isn't just for work. Use it in your personal lives. Use it with your significant others, your family, your friends. Because everything we talked about today transpires to every area of your life. Sure, we talked about work, we talked about professional experiences, but I also share with you the same exact scenarios you work through today. I use those same scenarios with my kids and my dog. So use the tools, they're yours. Keep them in that toolbox. After today, I'm going to actually, I didn't get a chance to finalize it, but I've got a worksheet that spells out those 8 tools. I will digitally make sure Caroline gets that and ask that she shares that with all of you as well. All right? All right. Questions from anybody? All right. I have my business cards, my Multiplying Good business cards on your table. Feel free to grab those. If you want to have a conversation, if you want to learn a little bit more about Multiplying Good, one of the things I will make a very quick pitch for, we're about to unleash a brand new service line that's going to be called our Recognition Champion Program. And this is a chance where we're partnering with companies to actually give you the ability to give Jefferson Awards away to your employees. Okay? Recognizing them for the work they're doing in the community, recognizing them for the services that they're providing. And it's actually going to be a whole opportunity with some training involved, recognition platform. So stay tuned. We're hoping to kind of unveil that in July. But that would be a great opportunity for you and your companies to find a way to recognize your employees for the services that they're giving in their community. And then at the same time, if you enjoyed what you heard today and if you see there's an opportunity for some additional training within your own companies, again, my wife and I have that opportunity. We can help out from a consulting standpoint as well. So, any questions before we finish up today? All right, well, thank you again all. Enjoy the refreshments and take this time to network and engage with one another for the rest of the morning. So again, thank you again for the opportunity. All right.